Hello, so I will be reading again from Black Beauty, and I will start with Chapter 9, Broken Knees, and we have this picture of a man in the beginning of this chapter. So, Reuben Smith was a good groom and a first-rate driver. He was gentle and took very good care of the horses. Everyone liked him, but he had one great fault. That was the love of drink. He would not drink for months. Then he would take one drink. He would then take another and another until he was drunk. One day, Reuben Smith was sent to town to carry out an errand for Lady Harriet. After he had done his errand, he rode me to a tavern. He ordered the groom there to have me ready at 4 o'clock. Smith came at 5 and said he had met some friends and that we wouldn't be leaving until 6. A nail in one of my front shoes had come loose. The groom asked Smith if he should have the shoe nailed back on. No, Smith answered, it will be all right until we get home. He went back into the tavern. I thought it was very unlike him to leave a nail loose. It was nearly 9 o'clock before he called for me. So he had gone there. He asked the dude to have him ready at 4, and they didn't leave until 9 o'clock. So that means they stayed there at least 5 hours, which is a long time. He spoke in a loud, rough voice that I had not heard before. He seemed in a bad temper. As soon as we were out of town, he put me to a gallop. He gave me a sharp cut with his whip, though I was already racing through the night. The moon had not yet risen, and it was very dark. The road was full of sharp stones, which loosened my shoe all the more, making it hard to run on that foot. At last, I felt the shoe fly off. If Smith had been sober, he would have stopped and looked at my foot. It was too madly drunk to care for me. I had to gallop over sharp stones with one shoe off. Smith cut me with his whip and yelled at me to go faster. The hoof of my shoeless foot broke and split. My foot was terribly cut by the sharpness of the stones. No horse could have stayed on his feet. The pain of my foot was too great. I stumbled and fell hard on both my knees. Smith was flung off at the speed I was going. He must have fallen with great force. I soon stood up and limped to the side of the road. The moon had just risen, and by its light I could see Smith. He lay without moving a few yards from me. I was suffering intense pain in my foot and both front knees. This road was not much used. At this time of night we might wait hours for help. I stood watching and listening. It was a calm, sweet April night. There were no sounds except for the low song of a nightingale. Nothing moved but the white clouds near the moon and a brown owl that flew by. It made me think of summer nights long ago in Farmer Gray's meadow. I wish I could lie once again beside my mother in our pleasant meadow near the pond. And here we have a picture of Black Beauty falling and flinging the man off of him. It must have been midnight when I thought I heard Ginger's step. I neighed loudly and was glad to hear a neigh from Ginger. She pulled a cart with Robert and Ned from the stables riding in it. They got down and raised Reuben Smith up, but he didn't move. He is dead, Robert said. Feel how cold his hands are. They laid him down again and came to look at me. Why, the horse has been down and thrown him, Ned called. Why would the black horse have done that? It is strange that this horse hasn't moved, Robert said. He then tried to lead me forward. I made a step, but almost fell again. Look here, he said. He has hurt his foot as well as his knees. His hoof is all cut to pieces. No wonder he fell. Smith would only ride him like that if he were drinking again. It is good that we were sent to look for them when they failed to return home. They put the body in the cart. And here we have a picture of Reuben, Black, and then them finding them. Robert came to look at my foot again. He bound his handkerchief closely about my foot. Then he led me home very slowly. I shall never forget that night walk. It was more than 3 miles. I limped on as well as I could with great pain. Robert often patted me and encouraged me on the way. And here's a picture of that. We see the handkerchief wrapped on his foot and him leading black. At last I reached my own stall. Robert wrapped my knees in wet cloth. He tied up my foot with wet bran to cleanse it and draw out the heat. I managed to get myself down on the straw. I slept in spite of the pain. The next day the horse doctor treated my wounds. He said that if my knee joints healed, I could work again, but that my knees would always be ugly. There was nothing he could do about the scars. It took a long time for my knees and my foot to heal, and I was often in pain. When I could walk again, I was put into a small meadow to rest. I enjoyed the liberty and the sweet grass, but I felt lonely. Then one morning the gate opened, and Ginger came in. I trotted up to her with a happy whinny. We put our heads close together to greet each other. She told me sadly that she had been brought in to rest from hard riding. The Earl's son had ridden her in a race when her muscles were sore. And here's a picture of them talking. With her high spirit, she kept up with the fastest horses, but her rider was too heavy for her, and both her lungs and her back were hurt. And so she said, "Here we are, ruined in the prime of our youth, you by a drunkard and I by a fool." We didn't gallop about as we once did. We fed and laid down together. We stood for hours under one of the shady trees with our heads close together. We heard the Earl and Mr. York say that Ginger would need to rest for a year to heal. Then they said that I must be sold for my knees were too ugly. Now for me to pull the Earl's carriage. It was not proper fashion to keep a horse whose knees had scars. "They will take you away," said Ginger, "and I shall lose the only friend I have. Most likely we will never see each other again. It is a hard world." And here we have a picture of them taking Black Beauty away. One day Robert came into the field with a halter. He slipped it over my head. There was no goodbye to Ginger. We neighed to each other as I was led off. She trotted along by the fence calling to me. I answered her calls until I was too far away to hear them. That's the end of chapter 9, and I will go ahead and read chapter 10, A London Cab Horse. Here we have a picture. I was bought by a man who kept several horses, which he rented out to different drivers. I was driven by many kinds of drivers. Some were kind and thoughtful and drove well. Some knew nothing about horses and cared nothing for my needs. I was driven over rough roads with a stone in my foot. I was flogged while I tried to pull heavy loads up hills. Later, I was sold to a man who wanted a horse to ride. He meant well, but he was very busy. He left me in the care of foolish grooms. When they failed to feed and clean me, he was angry. He decided it was too much trouble to keep a horse, and I was sent to a horse fair to be sold again. The horse fair was a very social event, as well as a place of business. There were horses and ponies of all kinds. Buyers were looking them all over, making offers. I was lucky. The man who bought me was the one I would have picked, had I been able to choose my owner. And here's a picture of him at the fair and the man who bought him. I heard someone call him Jerry. He was a small man who showed that he knew all about horses. He rubbed my nose in a friendly way. "Well, my friend, I think we'll get along," he said. He saddled me and rode me into London. When we arrived, the gas lamps were already shining from the lampstands on the streets. We rode through miles of crisscrossing streets. I thought we would never find our way. At last, we turned onto a side street and stopped. I soon knew that this was my new owner's home. He whistled, and his wife and a boy and a girl came out. "Open the gate, Henry," he called to his son. "And bring the lantern, please, Polly," he called to his wife. He rode me into a small stable yard and got down. Soon they were all standing around me. "Is he gentle?" asked the little girl. My owner smiled and hugged her. "Just as gentle as he can be, Dolly. Pat him as much as you wish." Her small hands felt good on my face, and I stood very still for her. And here we have a picture of them meeting Black Beauty. My new family was happy and loving to each other. Harry was nearly 12 years old and Dolly was 8. Jerry drove his own cab and owned another horse called Captain. He drove Captain in the mornings. In the afternoons, Captain often rested while I pulled the cab. On Sundays, we both rested. Jerry refused to work on Sundays in order to spend the day with his family. Jerry cared for us himself with Harry's help. He drove so well that I lost my fear of the noisy, crowded London streets. He cared nothing for fashion and never used a check rein to force my head too high. He talked with his family about my name. He is a good horse, Jerry said. He reminds me of our Jack before he became too old to pull a cow. Shall we call him Jack? Let's do, said Polly. It will seem like old times. So Jack became my name. Here's a picture of him pulling the cab. I never knew a better man than my new owner. He was kind and good, and always did the right thing for everyone. He was very fond of making little songs and singing them to himself. Come, father and mother, and sister and brother, come all of you, turn to and help one another. And so they did. Harry fed us and kept our stable clean. Polly and Dolly helped with the cab. They brushed and beat the dust from the cushions and washed the glass. Jerry cleaned us in the yard while they worked. There was a great deal of laughing and fun between them. It made Captain and me happy that we heard no scolding nor hard words. They were always up early in the morning, for Jerry would sing. If you in the morning throw minutes away, you can't pick them up in the course of a day. You may hurry and scurry and flurry and worry, you've lost them forever, forever and aye. He couldn't bear the waste of time. He refused to run us at top speed to get some careless person to a train on time. But he would do anything to help someone who was in real need. Near noon one day, a young man who was carrying a piece of heavy luggage fell in the street. Jerry helped him up. The young man walked as if he were in great pain. So here we have a picture of the man who fell. I must get on the 12 o'clock train, he said. This fall has made me late. I must make this trip. I will pay you extra. I would never race Jack for extra money, Jerry said. He and I will get you there for your need. Now then, Jack, we will show how we can get through the streets. At noontime in London, the streets are full of carriages, carts, and cabs. Big wagons meet each other on the narrow streets. Their wheels come so close that another inch and they would scrape. Jerry and I were used to traffic. No one could do as well in it as we. I was bold and quick. Jerry could see an opening in the traffic and guide me into it. We were blocked on the London Bridge for several minutes. The young man put his head out. I might be better to get out and walk, he said. I'm afraid we won't get there in time if this goes on. And here's a picture of them riding in the busy streets in London. Jerry told them that we would be on time. The cart in front of me began to move. We went in and out through the traffic at a quick trot. I found myself enjoying it. We whirled into the station just in time. And here's a picture of the man getting off the cab because they arrived to the station. Jerry's fellow drivers at the cab stand teased him. You said you would never drive Jack hard for extra money, they said, and here you did. He let them joke for a while. Then he told them that we did it for the thanks of the young man. And he added, Jack and I thought that running fast that time was worth the effort. That man was late by no fault of his own. As for me, I was fed extra rations. I thought of the fast dash through traffic as good experience. I knew that Jerry wouldn't ask it of me often. And that's the end of chapter 10. So make sure you write everything you remember from these two chapters, and then tell someone about the story and your favorite parts of it, or you can also write them down. And that's it. Thank you.